The world seemed to pause the moment the words were uttered, or rather, typed into existence across every corner of the internet. Chen ZheYuan and Li Qin, described by their agency as having a very close relationship. It was a phrase that shimmered with ambiguity, like sunlight on water, promising warmth, but refusing to reveal depth. For millions of fans, it was the ignition of a slow-burning fire, a spark that danced along the edges of every memory, every glance, every carefully archived frame of their shared life on screen and off. The confirmation wasn't loud, it didn't crash like a storm. It was subtle, like a single note struck in a silent theater, vibrating through the hearts of those who had long been attuned to their presence. In the quiet before the storm of social media exploded, the two stars moved in their separate orbits, unaware, perhaps, of how the world had begun to watch not just their performances, but the spaces between them. Chen ZheYuan had arrived at the studio early, as always, his hands tucked into the pockets of a soft, camel-colored coat. The air was crisp, carrying the faint aroma of roasted coffee from a nearby cafe, the kind of cafe where Li Qin would later appear, smiling with the calm elegance that made even strangers feel their warmth. He paused for a moment at the window, his reflection mingling with the shadows outside, and allowed himself the smallest, almost imperceptible thought of her, the way her laughter could tilt the rhythm of the day, like a delicate chord resonating where none had been before. Li Qin, meanwhile, adjusted the hem of her coat, her eyes catching the morning sunlight through the large studio panes. She thought of him, of the way he had waited while she rehearsed a particularly intricate scene yesterday, his quiet encouragement more powerful than any applause. She remembered how he had glanced at her from across the room, as if measuring her effort not just for the performance, but for the weight of her spirit. It was a subtle thing, easily lost to anyone not paying attention, but she remembered, and perhaps that was enough to make the air between them thick with unsaid words, a language built entirely of glances and pauses. The internet, of course, could not know this. They only saw the result of their carefully constructed lives, the photos, the videos, the curated interviews, and yet the fans had long been detectives, mapping every accidental overlap of location, every faint smile, every brush of proximity. When hashtags like hashtag Chen ZheYuan Li Qin and hashtag Faded Hearts Real Life began trending, the world seemed to tilt slightly off its axis, everyone peering into the possibility that art and life had begun to entwine. Old interviews resurfaced like buried treasures, the kind that felt accidental yet meant to be found. Li Qin's teasing of Chen ZheYuan in a promotional clip, where she joked about his smudged makeup, was dissected frame by frame. He had smiled then, not just a smile for the cameras, but a smile that contained the half-hidden note of affection that the world had been waiting for. And the fans, devoted and meticulous, saw it. Behind the scenes, there were moments the cameras could never catch, moments that belonged entirely to the narrow, intimate corridors of their shared experience. Chen ZheYuan, in a rare gesture of unguarded familiarity, handed her a cup of tea during a break, his fingers brushing hers for the briefest fraction of a second, leaving a spark that neither acknowledged aloud but which lingered in the air between them. Li Qin caught his eyes, holding the look longer than necessary, as if the unspoken acknowledgement of their closeness needed no words. These were the moments that built their quiet legend, the moments fans could only guess at, but which made every confirmed close relationship statement tremble with possibility. When the agency finally released its statement, it was measured, careful, precise. The two share a very close relationship built on mutual respect and frequent collaboration. The phrasing was deliberate, but to those who had long been attuned to nuance, it was a confession cloaked in neutrality. Online, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Fans screamed, posted, cried, laughed, and debated, turning every pixel of social media into a stage where desire, hope, and curiosity collided. Every post, every comment became a part of a collective narrative, a shared dream of what might lie just beyond the reach of confirmation. Even as the world erupted with speculation, Chen ZheYuan maintained a practiced calm. Silence, in his case, was not emptiness, but a canvas, leaving space for imagination, leaving room for longing. Qin, ever graceful, handled questions with a measured smile, acknowledging the warmth of their bond without lifting the veil entirely. "People just like to see us get along," she said during a live stream, her voice soft, but carrying a weight that suggested there was more than friendship, if only one could see it clearly. It was a dance of suggestion and restraint, a choreography older than time, one that both thrilled and tortured the hearts watching from afar. The physical traces of their closeness began to surface, subtle yet magnetic. Photos of the same cafe at slightly different hours, bracelets that seemed mirrored in design, fleeting mentions in interviews, all signs, all breadcrumbs, leading toward a story that was as real as it was imagined. And perhaps that ambiguity was what made it beautiful, a connection that could exist without name, a love story whispered between lines, more potent for the secrecy, more alive because it could not be pinned down. As the hours passed and social media continued its fevered frenzy, Chen ZheYuan and Qin moved in their separate spheres yet remained bound by invisible threads. Every meeting, every shared project, became a delicate negotiation between public persona and private truth. And in those quiet, unrecorded moments, where he caught her glance from across a rehearsal room, where she adjusted his tie playfully before a scene, where they shared a wordless laugh in a moment too fleeting to frame, their closeness was undeniable, yet unspoken, perfect in its restrained intensity. The world outside moved with a rhythm oblivious to the quiet storm brewing in small corners of studios, cafes, and airport lounges. For Chen ZheYuan and Qin, the storm was something they navigated delicately, like dancers stepping lightly on a floor that might give way at any moment. Every gesture, no matter how small, became laden with significance. When Chen ZheYuan offered her a coat during a brisk evening shoot, the action was practical, yet the pause before she accepted carried a weight that neither dared name. Their eyes met, and in that suspended second, something unspoken flickered, a subtle acknowledgement of closeness, an echo of a heartbeat that no one else could feel. Fans, of course, interpreted everything. The internet became a gallery of obsession, each photograph, video clip, and interview snippet scrutinized with relentless care. Was that the same silver bracelet on both wrists? Did the corner of a cafe chair in one post match the background in another? Every detail, no matter how minute, was magnified into proof, into narrative, into evidence of a bond too compelling to ignore. Some fans whispered in hope, some in conspiracy, and others simply surrendered to the thrill of believing in a story unfolding in real time. They weren't just spectators. They were participants in a romance they longed to witness, whether or not it officially existed. Meanwhile, behind the veil of cameras and schedules, the two stars existed in a world apart, where words were sparse and glances carried the weight of poetry. During a long rehearsal, Qin had noticed the subtle crease of concentration on Chen ZheYuan's brow as he studied his lines. Without thinking, she reached out, letting her fingers hover near his shoulder for the briefest moment before retreating. He had looked up at her then, eyes catching hers, and for a heartbeat, the room held a quiet intensity, neither rushed nor demanding. It was a pause full of possibility, a suspended note in the symphony of their shared existence, a moment that could only live between them. In interviews, the tension was equally delicate. When asked about their chemistry on screen, Qin laughed softly, the kind of laugh that suggested amusement layered with private knowledge. "We understand each other well," she said, her gaze flickering to the side, and in that flicker, the world could sense the resonance, the closeness that had been carefully cultivated, nurtured, and protected. Chen ZheYuan, silent and composed, let her words speak for both, allowing the mystery to remain unbroken. Fans interpreted this as coyness, as restraint, and perhaps most potently, as confirmation of what they had long hoped to believe. Even in fleeting public appearances, the tension between reality and perception remained. A brush of hands during a staged photograph, a shared umbrella in the drizzle outside the studio, a conversation carried just above a whisper, all of it became the stuff of legend. They moved through these moments like skilled actors in a play, aware of the eyes upon them, yet never allowing the gaze to dictate the truth of their interactions. The poetry of their connection existed in these liminal spaces, between what was performed and what was real, between the world's longing and their own private understanding. And the fans? They thrived on these liminal spaces. They became archivists of emotion, curators of glances, interpreters of silence. Every tweet, every post, every edited clip became a shrine to possibility. Some fans swore they could sense the rhythm of their hearts through screen time, mapping smiles, pauses, and shared laughter into elaborate timelines. The lines between performance and reality blurred, creating a collective dream of a connection that might exist, just beyond the reach of confirmation. And perhaps the allure was not simply in the truth itself, but in the tension, the delicious, aching space where love might exist if only it remained unnamed. At times, the two stars themselves became acutely aware of the stories being spun. During a quiet afternoon in the studio, Chen ZheYuan caught Qin watching him from across the room. She didn't look away immediately, letting the moment stretch, letting the shared silence speak. He felt a warmth settle across his chest, the kind of warmth that is not loud or dramatic, but undeniable in its subtlety. "You notice everything," he said quietly, a statement, not a question. She smiled, that small, private smile that seemed to carry its own gravity. "I have to," she replied, voice soft, yet confident. Their eyes met again, the pause heavy with meaning, a conversation carried entirely in the language of restraint and shared understanding. Even in crowded spaces, they found private universes. On a bustling airport floor, she adjusted his scarf against a sudden chill, and he let her hands linger, silent yet attentive, as if acknowledging a truth neither could voice aloud. Cameras clicked, phones captured, and yet what the world could not see was the pulse of connection in that fleeting touch, the electricity of familiarity and fondness that traveled silently between them. Their shared world existed in the spaces between public and private, in the unclaimed moments that belonged only to them. The narrative in the media swelled and contracted like the tide. Some speculated that the agency's statement was a prelude to a more formal revelation. Others insisted it was merely a publicity strategy timed with their next project. Yet the real story existed beyond speculation, in the rhythm of rehearsals, in the quiet pauses during interviews, in the steady, almost imperceptible gravity of their attention toward one another. And it was in these moments, lived in soft secrecy, that the magic persisted unforced, delicate, and infinitely compelling. One evening, after a long day on set, they found themselves walking together under the soft glow of streetlights. The city hummed around them, yet in that shared silence, the world felt suspended. Chen ZheYuan glanced at her, a slow, searching look that lingered long enough to draw a quiet inhale from Qin. She met his gaze, and in that exchange, there was an acknowledgement, a tentative bridge between friendship and something deeper, a heartbeat of possibility. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The warmth between them, the ease of companionship, and the subtle current of longing were enough to fill the space entirely. As the weeks passed, those who followed their story online began to understand why the frenzy existed, not merely because of rumors or headlines, but because Chen ZheYuan and Qin had created a narrative far more potent than public confession. A story of restraint, intimacy, and hope. Fans whispered collectively, "Even if they're not dating, I hope they stay in each other's lives forever," and in that longing, the truth of their connection took shape. It was less about labels and more about presence. More about the quiet endurance of closeness that survives scrutiny and thrives in the unspoken. Finally, in a private corner of the studio garden, lit by the gentle evening glow, Chen ZheYuan and Qin paused. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a shimmer of emotion that had never been named aloud, and he mirrored it, letting his expression carry a weight of care, respect, and something tenderly undefinable. It was a moment that needed no audience, no verification, no pronouncement. In the hush of that twilight, the world's noise faded, and there existed only the quiet truth of their closeness, the soft bloom of something that might one day be love. And in that delicate space, there was hope, hope that their connection, whether ever publicly acknowledged or not, would continue to grow, deepening in small gestures, gentle glances, and shared silences. To the millions of fans who had followed every subtle sign, every accidental coincidence, every carefully curated interaction, this story became a testament to the power of restraint and the beauty of possibility. It was a reminder that not all love needs immediate confirmation, that not all intimacy is loud, and that sometimes the quietest connections are the most profound. Theirs was a story suspended between reality and longing, a slow-burning romance unfolding in pauses, glances, and moments that belonged entirely to them. Thank you for staying with us through this captivating journey into one of the most talked-about stories in Chinese entertainment today. What do you think? Are Chen ZheYuan and Li Qin just incredibly close friends, or is there a deeper story still waiting to unfold? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's discuss together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to 24H News TM for more exclusive updates, in-depth celebrity insights, and trending gossip from across Asia. Stay curious, stay kind, and as always, see you in the next story.